A lot of people might think that the Ukrainian war started in 2022, but it actually started in 2014. 2014 was a tumultuous year for Ukraine. The 2014 Revolution of Dignity ousted President Yanukovych. Pro-Russian factions in the Ukraine's east began their uprising, eventually leading to Donetsk People's Republic declaring independence and Russia annexing Crimea. In 2014, the West was mostly silent, and Russia barely suffered any consequences except a few largely incidental sanctions. So the question isn't why Russia would invade Ukraine in 2022, but why wouldn't it? After all, Russia hadn't done this multiple times before. In the last 30 years, Russia invaded Chechnya twice, once in '94 and then again in '99, invaded Georgia in 2008, supported the secession of South Ossetia and Transnistria, and faced little to no blowback. So why wouldn't Putin order the invasion of Ukraine? In 2014, Ukraine was in complete disarray. Its military was weak, and the country was busy dealing with internal quarrels. But by 2022, things were different. The West wasn't content with sitting back while Russia took over Ukraine. With Western aid and support, Ukraine was ready to put up a fight. So when Putin mounted a thunder run to Kiev, it went down in history as one of the greatest military failures in modern times. According to open sources, so far, Russia has lost 11,000 pieces of military equipment, ranging from vehicles to aircraft to artillery pieces, and has lost between 20 to 50,000 personnel. But Russia has lost more than men and hardware. Brought on by sanctions, Russia saw a deep drop in the value of the ruble following the invasion, a sharp increase in inflation, and the Moscow Stock Exchange has been delisted by most major economies. But perhaps more importantly, Russia's invasion has caused the very thing it cited as the reason it started the war: NATO expansion. This is what NATO and the Warsaw Pact used to look like during the Cold War. And this is what NATO and Russian allies look like now. While Russia has made many claims for justifying its invasion of Ukraine, the main one was to protect its security interests. Specifically, Russia has argued that NATO expansion and the potential NATO membership of Ukraine was a threat to Russian security. Since the dissolution of the Soviet Union, 14 nations have joined NATO, excluding the pending memberships of Sweden and Finland. Sweden and Finland had maintained neutrality during that time, Finland since World War II, and Sweden since the 19th century. However, if there was any lesson to be learned from the invasion of Ukraine, it is that neutrality simply means one stands alone. So last year in March, in less than a month after the invasion of Ukraine, both Sweden and Finland announced their intentions to join NATO, discarding decades, if not centuries, of foreign policy. But their road to NATO would be a rocky one, thanks to one of the most overlooked critical players in the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. While the West was quick to give the go-ahead for the two nations' accession, Turkey was anything but. Turkey joined NATO in 1952 as a security guarantee against a potential Soviet invasion, and thus has been one of the oldest members of the alliance. But Turkey has never missed an opportunity to make its NATO member status into a difficult relationship, earning it the nickname NATO's problem child. So when Turkey held up Finland and Sweden's succession to NATO, it was greeted with suspicion, as if Turkey's allegiance didn't lie with the West, but more so the East. Turkey and Russia have a peculiar relationship. These two nations are neither friends nor foes. Turkey's relationship with Russia is one of complex interdependence and compartmentalization. Turkey, among many other things, needs access to Russian markets for trade, while Russia needs any friends it can get, especially ones that it can use to bypass sanctions or gain access to banking. A 2022 parliamentary question by the European Parliament states, "The European Union and its member states, together with NATO countries, have imposed very severe sanctions on Russia. Although a member of NATO and an applicant for EU accession, Turkey is refusing to participate and has become a transit hub for Russia, enabling the economic blockade to be circumvented. A large number of Russian companies have opened branches in Turkey and are cooperating with Turkish counterparts that provide a front for their import activities. The number of companies with Russian capital located in Turkey quadrupled in the first 8 months of 2022, with exports to Russia up by 43% and imports from it by around 125%. Additionally, earlier in 2022, after Turkish President Erdogan met with Russian President Putin, Turkish private and state-owned banks had begun using the Russian Mir payment system, offering a lifeline to Russia that was removed from the SWIFT global banking system. The banks only suspended their services after being threatened with sanctions by the US Treasury Department. While Russia needs Turkey for maintaining access to markets, Turkey needs Russia for a critical resource. Turkey is a gas-hungry country, being the 16th largest consumer of natural gas in the world, and almost half of Turkey's gas comes from Russia. Also, Russia is one of Turkey's largest import partners, with 8.1% of its total imports coming from it. With Turkey's economy at its worst in decades, Turkey, and by extension Erdogan, cannot afford to part ways with Russia. However, what makes Russia and Turkey's relationship so odd is that they're not only partners, but rivals. As two regional powers, Russia and Turkey have always been at odds going back to medieval times, having fought multiple wars in the Black Sea. But the latest conflict between the two states took place far, far away, in Syria. Russia has maintained a military presence in Syria since 2015 to back Bashar al-Assad, fighting both against the Islamic State and anti-government militia forces. In 2015, Turkey shot down a Russian Su-24 aircraft over Syria, alleging airspace violation and potentially nearly dragging all of NATO into World War III. But it didn't stop there. In 2019, against Russia's warning, Turkey launched an offensive into northern Syria, and in 2020, a Russian airstrike in Balyun killed 33 Turkish soldiers. In retaliation, Turkey launched yet another offensive into northern Syria. But Turkey and Russia aren't only at odds in Syria. When Russian forces mounted a thunder run to Kiev in 2022, armed with Western equipment and training, the Ukrainians decimated a 60-some-kilometer armored convoy using Javelin anti-tank missiles, rocket launchers, artillery, and various other systems. But the Ukrainians weren't writing songs about tanks, missiles, and artillery. What everybody was talking about were the Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 drones. According to open-source intelligence, in addition to at least 35 TB2 drones, Turkey has also supplied Ukraine with mine-resistant vehicles, rocket artillery systems, gear, munitions, a complete Ada-class corvette warship, and with potentially more to come. But while Turkey still trades with Russia, clashes with it in Syria, and supplies weapons to Ukraine, there is really no clear definition of whose side Turkey is on. Turkey and Erdogan have worked very hard to walk a fine line between the East and the West, and cultivated something that can only be described as strategic ambiguity, evidenced by Turkey's hesitancy to approve Finland and Sweden's NATO bids. So when Turkey futilely attempted to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, but successfully brokered a Black Sea grain deal, it was unclear what the underlying motivations were.
So the grain deal featured Turkey's capacity for facilitation and mediation in crisis situation. So that was very important for Turkey because Turkey aspires to be a country which can mediate and facilitate in international crisis situations, such as the one we have in Ukraine right now. It also increased Turkey's prestige among the global South countries because it prevented global food prices from skyrocketing. And last but not the least, it also justified Turkey's ongoing political dialogue with Russia, despite the latter's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine. So this was important for Turkey as much as for everyone else. And it's still in Turkey's interest to try to make it happen again.
In May of this year, the 20-plus year incumbent President Erdogan emerged victorious from yet another election in Turkey. But shortly after his victory speech, his position began to shift. Turkey has finally granted approval for both Sweden and Finland's accession into NATO. Erdogan had made a laundry list of demands from both Finland and Sweden, primarily lifting of weapon sanctions against Turkey for its 2019 invasion of Syria and extradition of Kurds that Turkey considers terrorists. While Turkey was quicker to grant approval for Finland, Sweden only recently got the green light from Turkey, with no clear indication of what took place behind the scenes. So what was Erdogan's strategy all along, and why the change of heart now?
I think the concept explained President Erdogan's approach to Sweden's NATO application, and the same three concepts explain why he changed his mind. The first one is two-level game. Two-level game in the sense that whenever President Erdogan is negotiating on foreign policy internationally, he is also negotiating with a domestic audience. And he'd rather win at the domestic level and lose at the international level than the other way around. But with the elections over, domestic politics became sort of irrelevant for him. The second concept is transactionalism. So President Erdogan has a transactional approach to foreign policy, and he is not alone. I mean, transactionalism is increasingly the name of the game in town. But in this case, basically President Erdogan is saying whenever somebody needs him or needs Turkey to do something, he always needs to get something in return today. So when Sweden and Finland applied for NATO membership and they needed Turkey's vote, he naturally asked the question, what's in this for Turkey? But more recently, he must have reached the conclusion that although Sweden did not deliver everything he expected Sweden to deliver, the Swedish government had actually delivered as much as they could politically. And moreover, although this is not public, it seems that he has also got some promises from the United States and European countries as well. So basically, from a transactionalist approach, President Erdogan thinks that Turkey has already gained as much as it will ever. Now, the third concept is brinksmanship, and President Erdogan is the master of brinksmanship. He basically escalates tension to the exact point at which it becomes too risky. And indeed, after the elections in Turkey, and given the situation of the Turkish economy, prolonging this process had become a little bit too risky. The United States, for one case, tried to refrain from engaging Turkey direct until the elections in Turkey because the United States did not want to be dragged into the election process. But once the election is over, the United States visibly increased pressure. And given the situation of the Turkish economy, President Erdogan must have reached the conclusion that he should not take too many risks.
As the Ukrainian counteroffensive rages on, the battle lines are stagnant. But this is far from good news for Putin. With dwindling supplies and morale, and with turmoil at home, this is still Russia's war to lose. But as Turkey slowly inches towards the West, has it made a new enemy out of Putin?
So the Turkish-Russian relationship is characterized by competitive cooperation. They compete at times, they cooperate at other times, and sometimes they compete and cooperate at the same time in a compartmentalized manner. President Erdogan not only green-lighted Sweden's NATO accession, but he also very publicly expressed a desire to return to Europe, to return to the West. So one of two things could happen. So Putin could reach the conclusion that Turkey is now aiming to a better relations with the West, doesn't care for Russia any longer, and therefore is not going to have the same kind of cooperation. Or he could be more realistic and say, okay, there are now new parameters, there are new realities. Turkey apparently needs Russia less than it used to. I should try to still cooperate with Turkey based on these new parameters, and we should recalibrate the relationship. Now, the second would be a little bit more realistic and could salvage the Russia-Turkey relationship. But this is not how Russia responds always. They might sometimes see things black and white. So depending on how Russia responds, Turkey will consider its policy towards Russia.